Stop. If you're a diehard Monster Hunter fan and have a dedicated content creator that you watch for all of your information, then you will find nothing terribly insightful in this video. I want to be honest up front and respectful of your time. While I have over 200 hours in Monster Hunter Worlds, I've not played a Monster Hunter since then, and I most certainly haven't been keeping up. For those that are new to the franchise or just got started with the beta this last weekend, I want to share my thoughts across the beta experience to give you an idea of the good, the bad, and the ugly of Monster Hunter Wilds beta. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by uploading the knowledge in my videos. So for the good, I think Wilds is an awesome step forward for the series. The combat feels far more fluid. It's lost that choppy, chunky slowness where I felt like I was moving like a snail compared to a lightning fast monster. The new purely open world lobby system is a fresh approach to the game that helps break up the constant loading screens and slower game pace of the previous camp system. Also, I love the new 2-weapon system, which allows me to have 2 weapons to quickly swap to mid-fight, opening up a lot of gameplay options. For the bad, the combat, while a lot better, is still the prime pain point for me. As someone who loves a lot of Soulsborne games or the other combat games where animation canceling, faster pace, and a lock system rule the day, the combat takes adjusting to. In my opinion, I think it's the one feature that will make or break newer players to the franchise who will get frustrated. The game hinges upon you mastering your weapon, and it doesn't necessarily hold your hand through that process outside of showing you what the combos are in the upper right corner of the screen. Knowing this beforehand can turn this from a bad to a good for the game, but it's definitely something you should be aware of. Lastly, the ugly comes down to stability issues across the greater online community and a social experience that is convoluted across a million different menus, making playing with your friends a frustrating experience that doesn't need to be. This is a large point to bring up, as one of the initial draws to the series when it first came out has always been co-op gameplay with friends or otherwise. But that's the too long didn't watch this entire video. There's more to be expanded upon, and my ultimate impression of the game is very positive. I'm super excited to pick it up in February and dive into an experience that feels a lot more fluid, with a faster paced combat system and a more interactive game world that feels very much alive. If that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down. But before you head out, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe if this video ends up helping you, as each one of those things helps me out in a huge way. You can navigate to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline in the description. And if you're for sure going to be picking up Monster Hunter Wilds, you can find a link to my Nexus Store where you can pre-order a Steam copy of the game. 2 points on this. A, the key will be sent to you in February, and B, please only pre-order if you're going to be picking the game up without a shadow of a doubt. If the beta gave you pause, then wait until more reviews or even another beta comes out to see if your fears about stability or what have you have been fixed. This is just a great way to support the channel if you're already intending to buy the game. But let's get started here on the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starting us off, let's talk about the good. So the combat feels fresh and exciting compared to Monster Hunter Worlds, which was my last experience of the series or the game. The new focus system helps keep your character on base with their attacks rather than kind of trailing off just to the side of the monster. And that's really a big thing here is you're not going to have a lock-on system. This is all going to be something that's going to be dependent upon the camera. And the focus system gives you that ability to sharply snap the camera where you want it by just pressing a button. It also helps with the wound system that's added into the game, which we'll talk about in a little bit or throughout this entire video. Also, a lot of the weapons feel just different from the previous versions of the game, that I feel like it's a fun skill progression for veterans and for new players alike. I'm not jumping and going, oh, I know all these, I'm good to go. I played with the charge blade and I was just familiar just enough that I could get off the ground running, but all the little changes and tweaks to the combat and how it felt, it did allow for some adjustment to still feel like I was learning a new game rather than just simply picking up a DLC or whatever it was. Mastering one weapon is really the key to the Monster Hunter experience, and going into others after you've mastered that. This time around, though, we can carry 2 with us, quickly swapping them on our mount. So I feel like this opens up far more gameplay options on the fly versus having to restart your hunt entirely or leave to try a new weapon, whatever it is. Like, it's cool to have a longbow on you, a bow gun or a gun lance, whatever it is, in addition to like a sword and shield or whatever kind of melee weapon you want to roll with. So you have that capability to swap things around. Maybe you're going with a a monster that's flying. Okay, well, I already have a ranged weapon I can have at this. Versus before is, okay, I'm not really equipped to deal with this. This is going to be a pain in the ass. I'm going to go back to the camp and swap it off. You don't have to do that now. Also, a big thing is that the UI is a lot more intuitive and it's less clunky. So picking up materials, navigating to different portions of the map, etc., all of it feels a lot more fluid than previous iterations of the game, which had you go through so many different menus. It really stopped the flow of the game to constantly be picking up all of these resources, which even in Monster Hunter Worlds was still a pretty fluid experience compared to previous iterations of the game. But now it just feels so much more natural to run across a whole bunch of materials, press a button while I'm on the mount, and they all just kind of get gobbled up for me in a UI that kind of really funnels me towards the action versus losing me in the menus. The new wound system, too, is a fun way to make the monsters feel less like damage sponges and more like a dynamic fight, an experience that you usually get later in the game's progression, whereas now we're getting it right out of the gate, which is really fun here, right? Because Monster Hunter is all about these big, crazy, larger-than-life monsters that have different body parts you have to explode or different experiences as they progress through their damage cycles or whatever it is. Right out the gate, the very first monster you attack has got wounds, and you jump onto the creature to do different things with where those wounds are. You use the new focus system. It makes that combat feel more fun and engaging, whereas prior to this, you had to really wait until the latter portions of the game, like I was saying, to really feel that the fights felt dynamic. As you progress through worlds, you're shooting big harpoon guns at larger creatures, like things that are not just simply in the initial world, that have got their own instance in their engagement. But this is a great way to just make the game feel more, I guess fun is really what I'm going to go with here. Fun right from the start versus going, okay, deal with these first 3 or 4 bullshit monsters before you get to the really fun monster in this area. You just immediately kind of have that, which I very much enjoy. The mount system is another big thing here too. It's a fun way to traverse the world quickly. So, of course, mounting isn't anything new, but this is sort of a pocket mount like we have in games like Zelda, Elden Ring, Assassin's Creed, and the such. It just helps you navigate the world and feels like navigating the world is far less of a chore. Whereas in other ones, oh man, I gotta run all the way over there now. I gotta do this over here. The monster did this portion. They flew up in the air. I gotta go chase them down, and I'm sprinting and I'm sprinting and I'm sprinting. It's a lot more fluid because that mount is such a plug and play. Now, I know the mount has been a little bit of a pain point too because of the way that you can manipulate and use it. It has 2 different control schemes. My personal experience on Steam and using my controller on Steam has been very positive, but I know that that's a big one that people are having problems with right now. Another big thing here too is that the online lobby system is just an exciting way to make the game feel like less of a solo grind and more of an interactive world. Drop in, drop out of quests in an open world persistent environment keeps a better flow for the game versus the monotony of breaking the hunting grounds up with the camp experience. Before, you're at camp, you do all the stuff you need to do at camp, and then you go and queue up for a specific hunting ground. And I say queue up, you basically start the queue, your friends that are at the camp with you then queue in with you, and then you go. It was pretty much solo, co-op, or online queuing. It was kind of a really janky system. Now, it's just simply you're in the camp and you walk out of the camp and you're already in a large persistent server of up to 100 people. Joining active quests, joining active monster hunts, all of it just feels real seamless and enjoyable, whereas before it was marred with queuing systems, menus, all sorts of stuff that just kept you out of the game and in the menus. But overall though, I really am enjoying my experience, or enjoyed my experience as the beta is now over, with Monster Hunter, not Worlds, Wild. I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be a really fun time, but I don't want to get too off base with the good and weigh this video down too much in the good, because let's talk about the bad and the ugly. So for the bad, right now the combat feels fresh and exciting, but it's still a Monster Hunter game. So the combat has a natural barrier of entry that I think a lot of Soulsborne or other action RPGers will break themselves upon. You're either going to love it and learn to really master the system, because that's when the system gets highly rewarding, or you're going to hate it, get frustrated after 2 hours of no lock-ons and missed attacks. This, I think, will be the biggest hurdle to anyone looking to try Monster Hunter for the first time. It was my biggest hurdle jumping in for the first time as well, because I was so I was so used to lots of animation canceling, a lot of dodging, a lot of quick responsiveness, a lot of very keen hitboxes. Monster Hunter doesn't necessarily have that. The hitboxes are there, but they're nowhere near as tight, in my personal opinion, to the hitboxes of, say, like the Soulsborne series, where your character can just barely get a dodge under a sword slash that just was inches off the ground. Like, there's some wild stuff that you can pull off in, like, Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring. Monster Hunter is more about the gathering and the resources and the crafting and the ultimate hunting of the monsters, and less about its really like Loctite combat system. And of course, too, it's about mastering those weapons that you jump into. So I think that is going to be that biggest hurdle. Another part of the combat is the new focus system. That is both a great and not so great addition to the game for me. This is partly a skill issue, I'm not going to lie, but the implementation feels clunky. It's a positive step forward, but it's a system that I think needs to adapt to player feedback after this initial beta to get a focus system that feels a bit more seamless. As it stands, I'm constantly like finger tied trying to press focus to keep my attacks on base, hit my next combo, and also position my character. A lot of this will get taken care of with muscle memory, but right now it feels more like a pain point to me because I'm using this new focus system, which is like constantly jerking me to one side, and I sometimes even miss and go too far in one direction. Again, skill issue. I'll learn it as I play through it, but right now it's hindering me and pissing me off more than I want it to actually excite me and push me forward. As a result of the focus system, though, some of the weapons feel off base. Markedly would be the insect glaive, which feels like it has lost its wings, no pun intended. The weapon just doesn't flow like it used to, and I am by no means an insect glaive main, not even slightly. I couldn't even use it in the other games, but in this game, it felt even further beyond my skill capacity. So this might be one of those things that feedback from a bigger Monster Hunter player might be more valuable than mine, since, you know, again, I don't have a huge ton of experience with the insect glaive, but still, it's one of those ones that really felt off base to me. In addition to that, too, with the focus system, using stuff that wasn't particularly fast to me, really I struggled with. So using, say, the switch axe, or using the greatsword, or the hunting horn, I felt really terrible at. Again, it's something that I think we'll get used to in time, but the focus system, I think I personally focused on so much that it took away from the actual gameplay for me. And also, with the advent of the two-weapon system, I feel like some weapons piggyback off of others more so than before. And what I mean by that, I mean, ultimately this is a good thing, but it feels like some weapons, like the ranged weapons, need a melee counterpart to feel viable faster. In Worlds, all the ranged weapons had an awkward infancy, but even more so now in Wilds. This is, of course, my opinion on just playing around with this sword and shield and the longbow, but it didn't quite click for me in the way that I wanted it to. I wanted to feel like swapping over to the longbow felt like it had a gravity to it, and it doesn't. It's also, like I said, part of the ranged portion of the game. In the beginning portions is really rough. All of them are just the longbow, the bow gun, the gun lance. They just don't really feel very good until you get enough materials to craft better ones, and you just learn them a little bit better. Then it feels stronger, but it didn't kind of have that plug and play quick swaparoo that I was using. I've been playing tons of Thorn and Liberty, and Thorn and Liberty has a very seamless system across two sets of weapons. I think I was too much in that mindset, and I didn't get that quite with Monster Hunter Wilds, where I wanted it to have a little bit more of a fluid feel, where instead I have to mount up, then I swap weapons, and then I get off, and doing that whole process is a bit of a navigation, so it's not so quick plug and play. Again, I think that time in the game and reps will alleviate this pain point as well as the focus system, but they are two things that really stuck out to me as snagging points when I was playing Monster Hunter Wilds beta. And now we get into the ugly. So playing with friends is overly tedious right now. Prior to Wilds, you just simply invited someone to your party. There's a weird little party screen. They can navigate around the camp. You go to do a hunt, and they queue up with you and accept it. It's convoluted, but they're into the party. It's pretty much plug and play, good to go. I've used the phrase plug and play way too many times now in improper context. But either way, it feels like a hallmark of the series to have a funky initial co-op experience. But you can see from this footage, I had a hell of a time inviting my friend. So you have to first get their hunter ID. add them to your friends list. And that alone took way too long for me to figure out because I have the brain capacity of a can of Campbell's soup. From there, you send them a party link invite. Okay, cool. They're in your party link. So now you two can chat at least. But now you need to do an environmental link sync to bring them into your lobby. Lobbies being topped at, of course, of 100 players, and I didn't experience what it's like to be at a max players and try to bring someone in, but that might be another problem here. So this could have been a much easier process. And I'm doing this through PC, so just using join game or invite friend via Steam wouldn't work. You have to use the game's social system. If this was simply a, invite and then offer to sync up worlds, it would make the process a lot better. I have to manually do it right now as it is. I got to get your Hunter ID, then I got to send you the invite, then I got to send you the invite to do the sync, then you have to accept all 3 of those stages. First time around, it's going to lose people. One of the defining features of the Monster Hunter series, like I said before, is online co-op, with friends or otherwise. So this should feel as solid and as seamless of a system as the combat does. Another big thing is stability was a big problem that plagued the community. Personally, I haven't had any issues, but I'm using up-to-date drivers on a serious machine with an RTX 4090, so my stuff has to be locked tight because this is my job. But this has definitely not been the case for a slew of people online. And with that being said, Capcom has already said that the current working build is far more stable and in better shape. So I'm excited to see how that one goes. For those that don't know, the way game development works is once you've decided to do an alpha or a beta or a stress test, whatever it is, you freeze the build that you're currently working on and do QA across a number of system specs, virtual machines, console porting, whatever it is, to get a stable candidate for testing. But this doesn't stop the actual development branch that continues on. So this would explain the difference in builds, but again, while I did not experience it, it is a larger pain point that is worth bringing up in this video just to give optics on it to help that in the future. Lastly, I am still finding that despite the addition of the wound system, the game feels too much like a damage sponge experience. Keep in mind, this is also the way early Monster Hunter always feels. And it's also a hallmark of this series. It's like saying you love Diablo clone games, but you hate the Diablo style loot, the RPG system, and the constant clicking to attack of those games. In that case, you might actually just not like Diablo clones. So this is more of a personal gripe to have those early game engagements feel a bit more exciting. With that being said though, I did have a ton of fun getting involved in environmental traps on the monsters and slamming into the weak and wounded body parts. These are all concepts that are either brand new to Wilds or stuff you'd experience later in the game, so it still does feel fresh. That truly does break up the monotony of simply slashing at a monster's feet. Also, it's worth mentioning that as you get better at the combos and styles of weapons, the game becomes less of a button mash and more of a calculated series of steps to strategically charge up, say, your Charge Blade's elemental attack to unleash its full strength, or whatever other weapon you're tampering with to learn to unleash its true damage potential. So we've covered the good, the bad, the ugly of this game. Now, what are my overall impressions of it? And honestly, like I've said before, I'm very excited to jump into it in February. I think it's going to play like that kind of go-between of a single-player Monster Hunter, or just the way Monster Hunter I've always felt before, where you feel very, I don't want to say nuanced, but you feel kind of siloed when you play Monster Hunter. You've got your own little world, and maybe you play with people online, maybe you play with friends, but it's always felt like a very siloed experience. What I like about Monster Hunter Wilds is that it feels far more open, it feels far more accessible. And I think that that is true across not just simply the game world, its persistent online world, but also the combat system feels far more approachable. The way that the focus system, even though I have gripes with it, it still feels like it's like that halfway point between a lock-in system of other games and the no lock-in system of a Monster Hunter where you're kind of constantly spinning the camera. It's like, okay, here's like a little in-between so you can kind of get on base. So I think that all the pain points I brought up are things that I'm going to not have eventually. As I put more and more hours into the game, something I didn't really want to do with the beta, I'll be able to alleviate these things because I think so much of it is a brand new experience from Monster Hunter Wilds, right? Because it's not in Worlds. They've got the systems here that I'm interacting with that I'm sucking at, and getting used to that style of game again. It is truly, I've said it so many times in this video, but getting used to and understanding and mastering Monster Hunter's system is both the reward and the journey of the gameplay. It's not like when you jump into any of the Soulsborne clones where you have like a functional 70, 80% knowledge base to go off of. Like if you play Elden Ring, then you can jump into the new Lords of Fallen that just came out and probably still understand the majority of the game to get off the ground running. It's just not the case with Monster Hunter. You have to learn the different pacing and the different cadences of combat. People have even remarked how the combat animation or the combat frames are way different in Wilds versus the other ones. These are all things of people that have played this series a lot and they understand it. And I'm really excited to jump into it with friends, create little guild clans, whatever, and have fun with it because it's part of the experience. While I enjoy Monster Hunter, I think the most, not encapsulating, but one of the most rewarding portions of it is playing along friends and having those conquering moments where the 3, 4, 5, whatever of you kill a big target and you're like, oh man, that was butthole clenching through the whole thing. And that's something that we did with Worlds quite a bit that I'm very excited to replicate here with Wilds. I think stability, those things that are initially bad things, I think they will get fixed. There's not necessarily a wariness, but we experienced Dragon's Dogma 2 having some issues with frame gen. And frame gen was something that was fixed in Dragon's Dogma 2 via a mod pretty quickly, and then an official patch. So people have said that frame gen is part of the problem, and I'm wondering if that is something that will be fixed at launch, or if it's something that we're going to have to kind of retrace the steps of Dragon's Dogma 2, where they did have those frame gen issues. All sorts of stuff like that are probably not worth talking about now. We're 3-4 months away from launch, so hopefully we will get we'll get those actual things fixed and tweaked in maybe some more beta experience or what have you. But overall, again, really excited about the game, really excited to dive in once more. And of course, it's worth noting too, they're not called peyote. That's not what it is. The feline who follows you around now speaks not feline language, but English, which is cool because you can now understand when they're trying to say like, hey, listen, they don't just kind of like bibble to babble at you like when you're playing Star Fox. They actually give you on screen point outs like, hey, you just passed that thing over there. Oh, okay, cool, crap. I'll go get it. So a lot of little things, a lot of cool little steps forward for the series that I'm really excited about that I think are ultimately going to translate to a really fun game come February when it goes live. But go ahead and let me know in the comment section below what your experience of the beta was. Were you marred with connection issues? Did you have a hard time connecting with your friends? Did you just constantly have crashes? Or was it seamless? Were you crushing and rushing? Are you brand new to the series and this is the first time you're jumping in and everything about it is exciting and fun to you? Or did you jump in and you are a veteran and things just didn't click? Whatever your experience is, I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are below. And are you excited for that launch come February? But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.